Sometimes you witness a performance that you just know is going to stay with you for a long time. For 3 seasons, HBO's Barry has been a surreal roller coaster, loaded with comedy, unique action sequences, and dark psychological drama. If that sounds like a list of ingredients that shouldn't complement one another, that's because they normally don't. But the show is creatively held together by writer, director, and star Bill Hader. Until 2018, Hader was most known for his tenure at Saturday Night Live, popping up in Judd Apatow comedies like Superbad and Trainwreck, and even collaborating as a staff writer on South Park. At age 40, it made sense for him to take the next step and stop being a strong supporting cast member for other people's projects and finally take center stage himself. But with Barry, a show that starts off light and gets progressively darker, he truly exceeded all expectations and showcased a unique set of dramatic capabilities that earned him 2 Emmy Awards to date. And for me, this performance shines so bright because of one thing: Bill Hader's incredible eye acting. Whether it's comedic or dramatic, Bill's expressive eyes keep the audience engaged and on his side. He could be looking like an awkward deer in the headlights, boiling over with rage, experiencing inner conflict, or emotionally melting down. But the viewer always has this direct window into what Barry is feeling, which shapes the entire texture of the piece. This may sound obvious or easy, but if Hader didn't make Barry so emotionally transparent, we wouldn't be able to empathize with him because of the heinous acts he's committing. Some actors use their voice, some actors use their body language, but Hader masterfully uses his eyes. Now don't get me wrong, he still uses his voice and body too, but not to the same degree. So let's examine Bill Hader's eye acting range to highlight how his unique expressions expand the dramatic potential of the series. Now there will be some spoilers from Season 1 throughout, but I'll withhold Season 3 spoilers until nearer the end of the video, and I'll give you another warning before we dip into that. Let's start with externalizing an internal battle. The essential ingredient to getting this performance right is understanding Barry Berkman's key personality flaw: overvaluing what other people think of him, also known as people-pleasing. His character is easily molded by other people's desires, and this creates persistent internal conflict. He never knows if he should blame himself, absolve himself, follow orders, or follow his gut instinct. He's always searching for answers, unsure what to think or feel or do, and Hader communicates this battle with clear, animated, shifting eye movements. If you choose to just focus on what Barry is actually looking at, you'll notice many examples of this throughout the series, where Barry is either looking for an answer internally and his pupils are bouncing back and forth, or he's looking to his surrounding characters for approval. We see it in the 2nd episode, when Barry first expresses that he doesn't want to kill again. Now, a stronger-willed character would just know who they are, look straight on, and give a solid answer. But because the story is all about how Barry is manipulated into doing other people's bidding, instead we witness him experience a huge amount of social pressure from everyone in the room. The more uncomfortable he is, the more his eyes shift, looking both internally for the truth and externally for approval, while simultaneously looking ashamed he's letting everyone down. When Ryan's father is grieving on stage, Barry gets overwhelmed with guilt and has to exit. But let's see how Bill communicates this internal conflict. At first he's trying to hold it together, but then once one eye slips over to his left and bounces back into place, this subtle gesture is what triggers his entire body into motion. It's what first informs us that he wants to escape. And then as he does exit, notice how he's making eye contact with his passing classmates on both his left and his right, showing he's aware he's being seen. But then the final eye movements become more centered, demonstrating his internal conflict. We can see he's being emotionally tugged in different directions. So there's looking at others for approval, and then searching inside himself. Later, when his classmates put forward the idea that anyone who takes a life is morally doomed, Barry pushes back and argues against them. But notice how, as he argues, his eyes shift from Sally to the class, back to Sally, and then down as he feels ashamed of himself. Barry keeps looking at all the people he's trying to please, all the people whose validation he's seeking, and the more the argument continues, the speed of these eye movements increases. Hader's eyes are bouncing from one influence to another. Now these are small creative choices, but imagine how different the scene would be without it. If Barry just argued looking straight forward, or down at his feet the entire time, our perception of him as a character would completely change. Even in the very first episode, when Barry pitches himself to Mr. Kusano, he launches into his monologue about how being an assassin is making him depressed, which Kusano thinks is just acting. And Hader really shows us a man at war with himself. His breathing is strained, but his eyes are so active. He's shifty, looking in different directions. He tends to finish each sentence looking at Kusano, but emotionally is too ashamed and distraught to make eye contact during the darker details.
Yeah, when I got back from Afghanistan, I was really depressed. I didn't leave my house for months.
And as he closes his monologue, insisting there is more to him as a person than just killing, his eyes are glistening with tears, and he's getting more and more fearful about what Kusano's final judgment will be. So his body language and eye movement becomes even more erratic.
Maybe this is all I'm good at. I don't know.
This leads us into the scared child, and this is important because without it, Barry wouldn't be a very sympathetic character. Yes, we know he's at war with himself, but Hader shows us this vulnerable, innocent side to Barry. After seeing Ryan's father grieving, now that he's escaped outside, he tries to deal with the emotion, and he resembles a scared little boy as he looks into the distance, scared of who he is, scared of what he's done, and then back to Sally. This is a real lesson in how to get a lot from very little. During a simple look away, Bill inserts an entire existential crisis, fomenting behind his eyes. And on the flip side, when he pitches becoming an actor instead of a killer to Fuchs, he's wide-eyed, as if he can see a bright future ahead of him with a childlike sense of wonder. Stella Adler famously stated, "Acting is reacting," and Hader is a masterful reactor throughout the series. When his military friend Chris confides in him that he wants to go to the police, just Barry's eyes alone take us on an emotional journey. The fear sets in, so he instantly closes his eyes, not wanting to see the truth of what he might have to do yet. He searches out the window for answers. Once he sees the obvious solution that he doesn't like, another wave of fear hits, so he closes his eyes again. Once he roars, "Why did you say that?" Now we see from Barry's expression that he's already in a state of grief. His eyes are a stinging red, glistening with tears. This subconsciously communicates to the viewer that the decision is already made. When he looks into Chris's eyes, we see the scared child again, fearful of what he knows he's about to do. But once he whispers, "I told you to get out of the car, man," he's absolving himself of guilt. You can see that he's no longer trying to fight Chris's fate. The same scared but innocent child emerges with Janice at the end of season 1. He pitches the idea that he's a good person, and his eyes are fully open, showing he's being genuine and completely unguarded, welcoming Janice in because he really wants to be seen for who he is. The scene progresses, he's becoming increasingly scared of what he might have to do, so he pleads with her. There's no blinking, it's just direct eye contact. But as the gun waits for him, his pupils bounce back and forth like a ping pong ball, letting the audience experience his internal tug of war. Next is the silent film star, and this is because Bill Hader is so expressive, comedically and dramatically, that Barry would almost work as a silent film. For the most part, Barry's dialogue barely matters because he's usually withholding information. So without even realizing it, the audience is actually just reading Hader's emotional state to understand what's happening in each scene. In the very first episode, when he's falling in love watching Sally dancing, no words need to be said. This smile just slowly creeps onto his face, and we know what he's feeling. This smile is balanced over to the right side of his face, as if the smile is pulling him in the same direction as Sally. Then as Ryan begins to make noise on the opposite side, his face lets go of the smile, and his pupils take these little tracking footsteps over to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, blink. So Barry is being happily drawn to his future desires and then gets a rude reminder of the job he's already committed to doing. You don't need any audio to understand what's happening, what he's thinking, or what he's feeling. We see these tracking eye footsteps again when Albert orders him to take the shot. And through these subtle pupil shifts, Hader is showing us that Barry doesn't want to do it, but he will still follow the order. With a less capable actor, you might have to write more dialogue, let the characters argue it out for a bit, and then do it. But with Hader, his eyes can sell a quick, complicated emotional conversation in an instant. And he's just as, if not even more effective, when he uses this comedically. When he shows up with the intention of killing Sally's abusive ex-husband, Hader's performance is akin to a mime artist. He goes from so angry he's about to commit murder, to instant shock once he sees Sally, to immediate comedic retreat, all in half a second. And then we cut to him hiding around the corner with this hilarious wide-eyed expression. No blinking, just staring, reacting, and feeling. And that leads to the final feature, the Psychopath. And this is where there will be some spoilers for Season 3, so if you haven't seen it, this is your time to tune out. Despite his comedic capabilities, something about Hader's expressions make him a strikingly plausible psychopath when he wants to be. When Sally's ex shows up, the pure, unfiltered rage is all over his face. His nostrils are flaring. Actually, not just his nostrils, his pupils too. Eyes wide open, brow low, mouth blank, and then like a lion preparing to bite, we see these tiny little snarls tugging at his lip. No dialogue necessary, because the audience can easily read Barry's violent intentions straight from Hader's face. Hader brings that same emotional intensity to the Albert sequence in Afghanistan, the iconic wide-eyed stare as he locks onto his target. Then as he unloads his weapon, his bloated bug eyes fume with rage. A clear psychopathic instinct takes over. There's even spit flying out of his mouth. When he's told it's not the guy, and he has to grapple with the reality that he just killed an innocent man, Hader shows us as much of the white of his eyes as humanly possible, and stretches his face out long. This showcases the character's vulnerable state. Nothing is closed, everything is open, his eyes, his nose, his mouth. Hader has perfected balancing out these competing emotions in a single scene, so that the audience stay on Barry's side. He can explode with rage in one moment and then turn into a scared child the next. This makes the viewer have as mixed and complicated feelings about the character as he has about himself. Throughout Season 3, Bill brings a uniquely unsettling manic energy to each scene. He can be violently threatening Cousineau's family and still wear this bizarre mixture of emotional vulnerability on his face. He can explode with rage, like when his eyes lock onto Sally as a target because she won't help him. This snarling, intense, psychopathic expression, erratic breathing patterns, but just look at these eye movements. They're so rapid and unpredictable that it feels like another species. I don't think I've ever seen another performance like this. And it just gets darker and darker. When he confronts Cousineau about shooting Janice's father, just look at Hader's expression. His eyes, his whole face is contorted like Gollum. He's turning into a rabid dog before our eyes. All of this manic, chaotic intensity comes to a head when Albert confronts him about his latest murders. As a viewer, this is where we need to see the scared child come out. So Hader just completely opens up every facet of his face to let the audience in as much as possible. He throws everything at us, externalizing an internal battle, the scared child, the silent film star, the psychopath. Tears start to coat the surface of his eyelids. His pupils bounce back and forth, searching within himself, questioning if this is even real or not. Then Hader takes it one step further. Unexpectedly, his whole body splinters into these grief-stricken convulsions, and he shuts his eyes in agony. Which is a notable pattern throughout the first 3 seasons, that whenever things get too painful for Barry, he shuts his eyes to hide from the world. This highlights that the eyes really are a window straight into Barry's soul. He's normally an open book or searching for answers, but once it's too much to handle, he instantly shuts down. While there are many exceptional performances throughout the series, most notably Sarah Goldberg, there's something especially unique about Bill Hader's portrayal of Barry. It's loud, expressive, and animated, yet somehow still quiet, subtle, and layered at the same time. Barry Berkman is a complicated character to get right. If you play him too warm, then the story loses plausibility. If you play him too cold, then the audience loses sympathy and checks out. But somehow, mostly through his remarkable eye acting, Hader got it just right. And although the series focuses on Barry trying to learn how to act, it turns out this was really an opportunity for Bill Hader to put on a masterclass of his own. If you enjoy content like this and want to see more of it, please do consider supporting me on Patreon, as it really does make a difference to how much content I can pump out. Or if you can't afford that, then simply like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment down below to help the algorithm do its thing.